Okay, thank you. Hello to you all. I would like to present today our practical experience participating in EARK, having Natura 2000 dataset as a pilot dataset. I come from Slovenian Environmental Agency. As you will see, we manage a lot of different kinds of data. I'm head of spatial information sector, where we, among other things, are dealing with GIS systems and GIS data. Okay, so we produce, manage, and use, and also share a lot of geodata. Some of that data are born and then interpreted, and products are made within our agency, and some of data are made somewhere on different expert institutions and are only held to us in order to use them and share them with general public. So we have a lot of remote sensors, thousands of sensors throughout Slovenia that monitoring our environment, like air temperature, sea levels, water levels, seismology. We create earthquake catalog. We are dealing with air quality, with soil, also protected sites, permits for industrial installations, and emissions from these installations. Why do we do it? Obviously, it is our purpose to provide information on state of environment, so we must collect all of that data and then make products out of it in order to serve it to the public, experts, and other institutions. We also report this data to different EU institutions. A lot of these data are under some EU directives like Air Pollution Directive, Water Frame Directive, Nature directives, and so on. We are also permitting permits for industrial installations, and we are evaluating their impact on environment, and also providing relevant data to different public sector. For instance, for building permits, they have to know where the protected sites are in order to protect them. Okay, and mostly general public. How do we do it? We have our own spatial data infrastructure. It's like silo-based infrastructure, 3 layers, database layer, obviously the most important, where we store all our data. It's Oracle relational geodatabase with Oracle spatial extension for managing spatial data. We collect the data from, like I said before, from a lot of sensors. We are modeling, we are analyzing, we are making new products. We collect some data from other institutions. For instance, in order to give some permits, we have to have a land cadastre. We then extract some parcels that are owned by company that wants environmental permit, and create new polygon from these parcels in order to have a time slice where do we issue a permit. Then we have GIS servers and web servers to provide these spatial data to general public. We do it by providing web services, OGC standard services. We have web applications, web map viewers, metadata portal, downloading apps, and also we have mobile applications to collect data from the field. It's like mashup. A lot of data are made in some other systems and are there only imported in our GIS system to serve the data to the public. So right now we are distributing around 200 geodata layers, and we have, of course, many more in our managing system. But what about archiving this data? First of all, we have to answer the question who is responsible for archiving. And the answer varies based on that, who are you asking that question? If I ask contest administrator of one data layer, of course, the IT sector is responsible for archiving. If I ask IT sector who is responsible for archiving data, of course, context administrators, we don't know what to do with this. So we have some custom-made solutions that are, I think, more or less universal. So in terms of IT, we have backupping, versioning, and some sort of archiving. As I said, we use relational database. We do redo logs. This database is installed in a cluster of servers in order to prevent hardware failure. Disks are put in RAIDs. And once a year, we even export some of our data. We put it on a tape and take it to the safe on a remote location. So informatics assure us we won't have any data loss if disasters come. Okay, we didn't test it in real life yet. Okay, we were restoring some machines, but not, we didn't have like data center destroyed. So why is this so? Okay, we have no existing procedures, no knowledge to support spatial data archiving. And this is very diverse. This is a consequence of digital transformation. Before, we have printed maps, and somebody stored printed maps and then later on put it in an archive. So now our data is primarily born in a digital world. It is sensors that's sending data to our databases and then being processed. They never lived in a paper, never existed. So this is kind of new to us. And of course, we are, as a public sector, we have many regulations and legislations, and this is not up to date. For instance, some regulation says you have to store, I don't know, some kind of nature preservation data in a map in a scale of 1 to 25,000. Okay, it is not possible today. So what do we do? First, down there you have a print screen from our database. We simply, when we get new set of data, we rename old data with prefix old. And then when it comes, when we got too much copies, we started old 1, old 2, old 3, okay, then we developed this solution with datum afterwards. So this is basically how we are dealing with old data sets today. Having in mind what I said before, when we get invitation from Slovenian National Archives to participate as a pilot in EARK project, we decided to give it a try. We started with introduction of the project, with some interviews, and then we identify our pilot dataset, which is Natura2000. This is a part of European Union network of protected sites under 2 directives, Birds Directive and Habitat Directive. It was established in 2004, with some minor changes or additions in 2010 and some maybe bigger additions in 2016. It is used in permitting, obviously. In technical view, this is a simple vector polygon feature with just a few attributes behind that. So it was a perfect case. What have we done? It was really like trainer-led lessons. The guys for archives, and Gregor explained it in a presentation before mine, did all the thinking. What do we have to do? So they came to us with already solution. Okay, we discussed a bit about formats. We discussed how we will archive context. First, I think it was idea to have, they would send us a lot of questions, which obviously it would be very hard to answer all of them in a way that somebody else would understand that. So then they come with the idea of recording an interview. So this was, I think, a very good innovation. It took us very little time. In a few hours, we were already archived all the context regarding usability of this spatial data set. Then we export data from our system, prepared technical documentation, and that was basically it. This is how we implement specification that Gregor represented before. This consists of 3 CIP packages. One is source data, because Natura dataset is a combination of many mapping of habitats of different species. So we added source data that we luckily found on our file systems, CDs, I don't know. Then we put in interview shapefile like original. This data set was born like shapefile. Then we converted it to GML. Okay, here we have a small, I don't know how to say it, but we exported it with ArcGIS software. So it has obviously support to export the GML, but it has, it switches axis, Y and X, and it is also an issue with projection, because we made it in 2004, and back then the definition of coordinate system was not EPSG standard, but was something else. So, okay, we then repeat export through QGIS, and it was it was better, okay? Then we prepared tech docs. Like I said, this was trainer-led, so they only give us these folders and say, put this data in here, put that data in there, and we relatively fast we prepared this documentation. So what did we learn? We obviously rose our awareness on archiving. We now know how spatial data are handled by archives, and we are now have knowledge how to prepare this data. We updated, our archives updated GML guidelines. New was that it is important to archive also context where it's used. We made some print screens of our current information system. How does this data look in our information systems? How do we use it? And of course, we learned how to prevent data loss. Now somewhere in the future, we will be able to automate archiving, I hope. What are further challenges in our agency? Okay, now we will start or have already started discussion on geodata archiving because we have large variety of data. What to archive? Do we archive only source data? Do we archive modeling? Do we modeling procedures? Do we only archive spatial representation of the data? Okay, this is a huge thing that we will have to discuss not only in our house, first in-house, and then with experts from archiving world. We have also large amount of data in raster formats, and not only in traditional raster formats like GeoTIFF or something. We have, because this modeling is really rather complex process. For instance, our colleagues in meteorology right now are modeling how global changes will affect Slovenia. They made raster 1 kilometer raster, and they computing, I don't know, temperature for every cell, for every hour, for the next 50 years. So a large amount of data, and they are using multidimensional raster formats. They were sometimes addressed as scientific formats like GRIB and NIT-CDF. Okay, this will be probably in the future some sort of solution will have to come up for this kind of raster formats. And of course, the idea is to implement archiving requirements at the beginning of the spatial data life cycle. Because as we see with the 15-year-old Natura dataset, we have some problems how this was made. We have to find people who digitize it, how they digitize it. And if we have these requirements when we were making Natura, we would easily and practically with minimum time consumption, we would prepare already the data set for being archived. So this is the main idea. In general, just a few words. I would advise to learn from implementing similar workflows. I see the workflow or archiving geodata, a lot of similarities with Inspire. Okay, it is not me. Obviously, a lot of talk was done about Inspire. This was the directive that was issued, I think, if I correctly remember, in 2007. And now, 12 years later, we know how to prepare metadata. We have metadata editors. And we are now learning to preparing some services. Okay, it was really probably too long workflow because it wanted to solve the problem by tons of technical specification that nobody of us, like managers of data, could understand. It was hard to digest. There were no existing tools. There were slowly rising knowledge base. So this is, as I see, why the implementation of Inspire Directive is so hard. So learn from that. Try not to reinvent the wheel. This is important because we have many directives, many regulations to follow. If we get completely new regulation for archiving data, this would be very hard for us. So try to use the already standing pillars in Slovenia. For instance, we have, okay, like I said, Inspire Directive. We have centralization of informatics on Ministry of Public Administration. They can provide probably hardware for that. We have different initiatives like Government Open Data Portal. This metadata searching catalogs are emerging. You already mentioned GeoNetwork. I think they are using CECAN and so on. So try to implement this solution that we are already prepared to participate in. It would be much easier for us than to prepare the data for archiving if you use the same pillars. And this is going into this direction, and this is, I'm happy. Then I think good coordination is very, very important, because stakeholders, data producers, archivers, other experts should be able to speak about their problems, like this conference. This is important in order to bring the best solutions. Okay, build knowledge base, obviously. Tools would be very friendly, for instance, and if I, again, this, like Inspire, we weren't able to make services, inspired compliant services, until some tools came up, and this is concretely Hail Studio, which is basically XSD mapper. It extracts a thematic XSD schema from Inspire from certain data team, and you can import then your data set and just visually link attributes one to another. And when this was presented, suddenly a lot of Inspire compliant services emerged. So we need tools. We small organization, very sector specific, with very sector specific solutions, do not have resources to build our own tools. So it is necessary that these tools are somehow suggested. And continue with small steps. That would be my recommendations, and thank you for your attention.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Yes, Jakob.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you seem to be of the same kind as our own Danish EPA, in that you have a lot of different GIS datasets, geodata sets, which you manage for and provide for other agencies as well. So that's a challenge, because I don't know if you've thought about whether to archive each and every dataset for itself, or you've considered in the longer run to archive several datasets in the same information package. My question relates to the historicity of the versioning of the data. I noticed there were 3 and maybe more GML representations in the diagram. How did you solve that? Because, for example, in Denmark, in the systems for physical planning, there are urban and municipal planning, for example. There are many phases of the approval of the planning area and the planning legislation. And there are also many revisions to metadata where the area stays the same, or revisions to the area, smaller or larger revisions. How do you document this, and was this a part of the archival information package?
Not really. Basically, okay, this is really not this data set that we use in a pilot is not changing so much. It has changes in a few years, so it is not rapidly changing data set. We are not. We didn't even change metadata. Okay, maybe we correct some when we implementing Inspire standards. We migrated from old, I don't remember which standard was that, the Dublin Core or something, to Inspire metadata. So it changes, but we didn't actually preserve the original, because the context remains the same. Okay, we didn't recognize it. As I said, we are not archivist experts, and we are not. We didn't see it as a major change to be archived.
Municipality Ljubljana Bertoncev. What I'm asking is regarding to the legislation. Legislation says that one who generate the data need to archive the data. In your case, we have also the same cases. We are aggregators of the data that are not only ours, but from different organizations and authorities. So you actually aggregated this data, and from the historical point of view, it is normal that you maintain this integrity while archiving this data. So by the law, you would omit all layers that are not yours, and you would actually prepare archive data for archiving and only your data. But in this case, this, overview, this context would disappear. So the not only for you, question is also for archiving authority. What would we do in this case? Because in municipality level, we have this spatial planning, and it is like a state. We have 200 layers, and what will we do now? Will we archive DOFs or not? And this is one question. And the other question is, regarding backupping and disaster recovery planning. If we have somehow, if we had prepared the mechanism for backup or for disaster recovery methodology, why wouldn't we use this, this archiving process for backupping or for disaster recovery purposes? This is one. The second one is also related to legislation. Legislation says that we must, after 30 years, we are, legislation in Slovenia.
Yeah.
After 30 years, we are obliged to give the data or to give this archiving documents or material to the archiving authority. So are we going to wait 30 years, or are we going to give this data, these packages of data on the scale, on every 5 years? In our case, when we plan, this is kind of circular process. When the plan is ended, then it stands for 3 to 4 years, and this is over. So we could easily give this data to the authority when the things is over. So we can use it only for the fluently processes, but the backupping and so doesn't matter anymore, because we give this to the authority who will backup it as a monument. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's a really good question, I think. I don't know if I will be able to answer, maybe with a little help for others. But first of all, yes, this first question regarding what should we back up, because this is really complex. How some data, spatial data set is made. So usually, in our case, ministry, if not all the data is born in our agency, ministry, our ministry, we are part of Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning, purchase or orders, they produce public tender in order to fulfill some achievements. So some expert institution then made the cartography. For instance, in case of Natura, we did archive all the input data sets as well. It is 14, I think, if I'm right, 14 data sets that are archived. Not only this representation that we are giving now, but the original mapping of habitats of certain species. So yes, this was taken care of. But this is rather complex because we are not the producers in this way. So, but this is, I don't know, it is not regulated. It is like a question, who is responsible for archiving? If I ask ministry, of course you are. If I ask the institution that made it, no, the ministry. So it is a question that we will have to answer. Somebody will have to be responsible for archiving, and that must be clear in the future. I hope we will get that. Then other questions. Okay, yes, I would be very happy if I would be able to put data into archives before 30 years period, because obviously, I wouldn't have to have backups for 30 years, but maybe if somebody from archive world can answer, okay?
Maybe I can try to answer on those two questions regarding to the archiving. First of all, 30 years, it's the maximum time, so it's no obvious regulation that says that we cannot get the data before that. So yes, it could be in 5 years, but if those data is still day-to-day used, so that means that archives will get full reading room because of that. In that case, we won't do that. So the specialists which knows data better will keep those data so much time till the use of the data won't be so frequent, and then after that we can discuss if it is the right time to transfer data to the archives or not. So this is one part, and the second one about who is responsible for archiving, which data set, and so on. For each data set in the process of the appraisal, the archives, which is responsible for certain data producer, have appraisal, and this defined whether it has or not the value of the archival value. So if it is, then we can point it out who is responsible, which authority is responsible for that data set. So it's quite clear. And for example, for some base maps, we will take it as it was already in Gregor's presentation mentioned. We will take from the person which will create it, and maybe just the data which is upon this base layer, we will probably take it from the second person. Okay, I hope that I managed to answer to your questions.
No. A very quick, really quick. We're running out of time.
Thank you. Just a brief comment that in Croatia we have shortened the period for giving the archival materials in digital form from 30 years to 10 years.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.